Welcome, welcome, and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
I
Amen.
mean, and
So,
it's my mother's yard site today.
so let's do it in honor of your mother's yortzeit. We'll
Go
also do it in,
ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Lauren. Did you want to say something?
No, that wasn't me.
Someone else want to say something?
No, I
Judith?
just,
Oh, okay, Harlan. Yeah, go ahead.
Lauren.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So also, of course, in memory of Jocelyn's dad too. So
Yeah.
as we go through his, I believe it's his, maybe they're into his shiva at this particular point. So,
Oh,
all right. So we're, as you can see, this samach that's printed here means that there's sort of a paragraph spacing in the Torah text itself. That if you went to a Torah scroll, you'd see that there's a word that this word would end the line, and maybe this would be the last couple of words of the line. But it's a paragraph. Okay. So ki yinatsu anashim. When two people or when people are involved in an altercation. Okay. Yachdav, together. Ish ve'achiv, a man and his companion. That's ach, of course, his brother, but two people. Right. So they're having a fight. They're having a fight. The karva eshet ha'echad, and the wife of one of them draws close. Lahatzil et isha, in order to rescue her husband miyad makehu, from the one who is beating him, the one who's smiting him. The shalcha yada, and she casts forth her hands. The hechazika bimvushav, and she holds on to this other person's genitals. Okay. So ki yinatsu anashim, just interesting situations, right? That Deuteronomy is dealing with. But I think it's obviously dealing with larger issues than the specific case here. So maybe it's dealing with fair fighting. I don't know.
By the way, could it include kicking him in the balls?
Yes,
No, I
probably.
mean,
It
for a
might.
woman,
Yeah.
that's probably the
Yes.
strongest thing she can do.
Right. Well, when we finish this little section, Judith, we can review that question, okay? And decide does it include that, okay? Because the issue is, now that it's two against one, is that an issue? Besides, but it's a specific case, okay? And I want to do the Rashi before I interpret further. Ki natsu anashim, when two men engage in an altercation. And this is from the Sifrei. Sofan lavo lidei makot. In the end, they're going to wind up smacking each other. They're going to wind up in a fist fight. Okay. Kamoshin Emar, as it states elsewhere, miyad makehu, right here, because it says miyad makehu. Here, they're simply having a violent disagreement, okay? But here we're actually saying that one person is beating another. They're actually now in physical, battle with each other. Ein shalom yotze. So you can't say that peace is going to result mitoch yedei matzot as a result of an altercation. In other words, you're not if you're going to uh, push back, if you're going to double down, if you're going to not try to resolve it in your mind in the discussion, if you're not going to engage in a polite conversation in terms of resolving whatever this difference is, you may well wind up physically with physically assaulting. Okay, that's basically the point of this Rashi. Let's keep going. The katsota et kapa, you shall cut off her hand. Lo tachzoch einech, lo tachos einecha, you shall let your eye show no mercy. You shall not show any mercy. Now, here you have the pshat of the text, and you see that the rabbis are going to totally rework this. Okay, so interesting. Rashi, the katzta et kapa, you shall cut off her hand. Mamon, right? So we're talking about financial compensation. We are not talking about actually cutting off someone's hand. We're talking about the fact that this kind of damage, you have to pay for these kinds of damages. Demei bushto. It has to do with the money that he gets paid for the fact that he was humiliated, that the humiliation of having this man's wife touch his genitals or hold onto his genitals is extremely humiliating, and for that she has to pay, or they're going to have to compensate this particular individual. Lefi, right? Because here we go. Mevayesh, because one humiliates, mitbayesh. Okay, lefi hamibayesh. So, in figuring out what the actual damages, whatever the financial cost is, has to be based on the one who is causing humiliation and the one who is receiving the humiliation, because that's depends on the circumstances of the various individuals. So whether it's a great deal of money or not so much money has to do with these particular additional elements to it. Or Eino. So then he says, well, but maybe or Eino ella yada mamash. Wait a second, he says, you got the pshat there. Maybe it does mean literally her hand. Ne'emar kan lo tachos ein. Lo tachos. Here in this verse it says, you shall not show any pity, right? The ne'emar lalan, the edim zomamim, and later on it's going to refer to scheming witnesses. This is a situation where witnesses accuse somebody in a false way, right, to scheme against this person. And there it also says lo tachos, and it says there you shall not show pity. So the question is that when it comes, essentially the law of scheming witnesses is that just as they wanted to do to the other person, it's done to them. They have to pay the penalty for what they falsely accused the other person of. But there are plenty of situations where, it just doesn't make sense that one should literally do that. And the rabbis prove that that is not what the Torah could possibly mean if the Torah is a book of justice. So even though it says tachos einecha there in that case of the scheming witnesses, and clearly in that circumstance, it is not talking about actually physically doing these things, but it is in fact talking about compensation, financial compensation. So this tachos is used as what is called a Gezerah shavah. This is, in other words, where a certain particular phrase is used in connection with one law, and it's used again in connection with the other law. You can derive according to the rules of logic, according to this particular rule of logic, the application there. So, ma lahalan mamon, just as in that case, we're talking about financial compensation, afkan mamon. So here too, it is considered financial compensation. And I think this is such an amazing and beautiful example of how our tradition understands the words of the Torah here in a more humane kind of way, and also in a way that I would say represents justice in the best sense, that something has to be done, there has to be compensation, and wherever we can, we're going to use financial compensation to compensate this person. Any comments before I go on? Okay. So these basically are laws of justice and equity that we're talking about here. Lo yeh lecha b'kischa. You shall not have in your purse even va'aven, a stone and a stone. We'll explain exactly what we mean by that. Gdolah, large and small. You shall not have in your purse. What are we talking about? The Evan, when it talks about two different stones, we're talking about mishkalot. We're talking about weights. In other words, you have 1 pound weight in your purse, and you have another pound weight in your purse that is not the same, right? So 1 pound weight is actually heavier than the other pounder weight. So when it says Gdolah uktana, that's exactly what it means in the Torah, large and small. And again, looking at the reframe, very early interpretations, Gdolah, right? shemechacheshet et haktana. The large one, which would contradict the other one. In other words, if you put them on a scale, the one would outweigh the other one. They're not the same. That's the issue, right? They contradict each other. Shelo yehe, and here's the point: Shelo yehe notel bigdula, that he shouldn't take stuff, take merchandise, which is according to weight, with the large stone. In other words, he puts the large stone on the scale and takes his merchandise according to that. Umachazir biktana, but when he's selling it, right, or when he's returning it, he has a small weight, and so obviously he doesn't have to give as much. So Torah is going to go on with this idea. In other words, just weights and measures, a foundation of society. Lo, here we go. Parallel. Lo yeh lecha beveitcha. You should not have in your house ephah ve'ephah. Two different ephahs, right? Ephah is, I believe, a bushel, right? A volume, I believe. Okay. Just going on a little bit. Gdola uktana, again, large and small. Same idea, right? Let's make sure, here we are. Lo yelacha, you should not have for yourself. Okay. Okay, that's right. The fact that it says you will not have lo asita chain, okay, sorry, im asita chain, because if you do such a thing, if you have two different measurements here that are supposedly the same measurement, lo yelacha klum, you'll wind up with nothing. You will not succeed. You will wind up with nothing. So we're talking about a God of justice and a God that demands justice and fairness. And going on, Evan Shlema, Vatzedek, a complete weight or stone, if you want, Vatzedek, and honest and true, right? Yelach, you should have, you should possess. Honest weight, Ephah Shlema, Vatzedek, and likewise an Ephah that is complete and honest. Yeah, you should have. Laugh for yourselves. Leman yarichu yamecha. And now, interesting enough, one of the few cases where the Torah promises a reward here. So, in order that your days be long, al ha'adama, upon the earth, asher Hashem Elokecha noten lach, which the Lord your God is giving you. So you can see how the Torah is emphasizing this idea of honest weights and measures. See here? So okay. Right. Even shlema v'tzedek yelacha. So yelacha. If you have a true and honest weight, im asita chen, if you in fact do this, yelacha, you will have harbe. You will wind up with a lot, with a great deal, by being honest with your measurements and your weights. Just going on here, ki to'avat Hashem Elokecha. As I said, we have this word to'eva, which often I will translate as disgusting, right? Because again, it's translated sometimes as abomination. We've come across this word, right? It is a disgusting thing to the Lord your God. Kol osa'ela, anyone who does such things, practices in this way. Kol osei avel, anyone who acts perversely, who doesn't act fairly and honestly. So I'm going to I think I'd like to stop here today, but I'd like to invite you to ask questions or make points if you'd like, for the record. Okay, let me stop the share. Okay. Looks like we might have a minion, so we can say Kaddish Derabanan. At any rate, before we do that, any thoughts, any questions, any comments? Yes, Mead.
No, just listening.
All right. Okay. No comments? I'm sorry?
I do have a question.
Oh, good. Yes, Judith.
I just keep coming back to Christians I talk to who look at the Bible, they interpret, the language in the Hebrew Bible literally,
Yes.
and and how do the Karaites, how do people who don't, how do Jews who don't, I don't know, can
Right.
follow Talmudic thought,
Right. Rabbinic.
interpret that?
Very
Yeah.
good question. So obviously, I try my best to understand my own tradition. I have little knowledge of Karaism, so I couldn't answer the question, Judith. I just don't know. I mean, they don't follow rabbinic tradition. So whether or not they have a literal interpretation, it's quite possible that they do. I mean, the literal translation is there, but I have no idea. I can't honestly answer the question.
The one I get from Christians is, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and this is why
Right.
their Old Testament is, harsh, judgmental.
Right. Although the rabbis again interpret that as referring to financial compensation.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I do know about Karaites is they do not put on talit and tefillin, or they don't put on tefillin. They don't believe in the boxes and the straps. I remember that we had a Karaite visiting the synagogue in Santa Rosa, and he said that they understand that metaphorically.
Huh.
So that was interesting. That was interesting. Specifically about putting on talit and tefillin. So, all right. So I think what I'm going to do, unless there's other comments or questions, I'm going to stop the recording. All right. Okay.